Alright, Valentine's Day. Thank you for ordering from Ernest at home. We really appreciate it. But I'm going to get started right away so I don't waste any of your time. The first thing you want to do is set your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. That's without a fan. If you're going to be using a fan, convection oven, you want to go about 400 with the fan. Okay? So we're going to... Alright, 425. We got it set. I've preheated my oven before this video, and I just took this Wellington out of the fridge. You want to leave this in until you're ready to bake it so the puff pastry on the outside stays nice and firm. But since I've preheated my oven, we're going to go ahead. You're going to open it, and you're going to see you have your puff pastry with your lattice. It's been washed with egg 3 times, so you don't need to put any egg wash or anything. You just need to bake it, okay? So it's on a piece of parchment, so you can just pick it up by the parchment and set it on your baking sheet. I'm using like a small transfer tray. You can use a sheet tray, half sheet tray, whatever you want to take it on. But yeah, just make sure it's nice and flat, ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven because, like I said, my oven was preheated and it was already at 425 degrees. If your oven's not at 425 degrees, don't put this in the oven yet because you want it to be in that hot oven the whole way. In a still oven like this is going to take about 30-ish minutes, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, but I'm going to say 30 minutes. If you're doing an oven with a fan, it'll probably take about 25 minutes. But we're going to leave this in there. We're going to leave the door shut for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to rotate it. Alright, it's been exactly 10 minutes. We're going to take this out. I'm going to show you where it's at. So we can see, the hottest part of my oven is the back left. So, of course, this is starting to caramelize, and the top is just barely starting to caramelize, but you can tell the dough is still raw. So what I'm going to do is I had it in like this. Now I'm going to turn it and put it in like that. Okay, so we're going to put it in here another 10 minutes and then we're going to check on it. Alright, it's been 10 more minutes, so 20 minutes total. I'll show you where we're at. You can see the lattice is really starting to get nice and caramelized, but don't let that fool you because there is pastry underneath it. And you can see in the front here how the pastry underneath it is starting to caramelize. That's what we want to look for. But you can see on top, the pastry here hasn't started to caramelize yet, so I can tell it's still like very doughy and not there yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in for 5 more minutes, and then we're going to check on it again after 5 minutes, and then at that point we're going to start roasting our potatoes and heating up our spinach and our sauce. So I'm going to throw this back in. Alright, 5 more minutes have passed, so we're at 25 minutes right now. We can take a look at it. So you can see, like I was saying, the pastry in between the lattice up here is now starting to caramelize just a little bit. So I think it's got like 5 to 8 more minutes. So we're going to go ahead and put this back in the oven. And in its last 5 to 8 minutes, we're going to start heating up the rest of the meal and getting it ready. So I'm going to place this in here. And then the first thing we're going to do is do our potatoes, which you have in one of these. And you're going to open up and you're going to see I have 4 pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting my pan hot. I'm using a cast iron. I use this to cook a lot at home. If you don't have a cast iron, you can just use a regular saute pan or whatever you want to use. Just enough, have something big enough to where you can fit all 4 at the same time, or if you just want 3 of them, you can share 3, whatever you want to do. While that pan's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and grab my spinach. And while we're searing this, we can go ahead and just really slowly heat up our spinach in a pot. Also, if you don't want to do this on the stovetop, you can just do this in the microwave. It'll be fine. So we're going to go ahead and just scoop this into here. Get it all in there. And I'm going to put this on the stove on like the lowest flame possible. So it's just rolling really slow while we do the rest of our meal. Maybe not the absolute lowest flame possible, but like just a little bit. Just a very low flame, so it's just very slowly heating up. pan's starting to get warm, so I'm going to go ahead. I've got canola oil, and I'm just going to put a light coating on the bottom. Just kind of move it around so that oil is all over the bottom of the pan. So we're going to go ahead and open these up. And you might see little flecks throughout the pave. That's just cracked pepper in there. They're russet potatoes. They're just sliced real thin, raw, and then stacked real tall, and then baked in an oven at like 350 degrees. Takes about 2.5 to 3 hours for it to get tender all the way through. And then once it's tender all the way through, you pull it out, and then you stack weight on top of it. So it presses it down into this brick that the starch then sticks together, and then we're going to sear. So I can see my pan's hot, so I'm going to bring these over here. And just one by one, I'm going to pick them up, and I'm going to place them in the pan. And you should hear it sizzle. I'm going to do all 4 of them so you can see. So we can see that it's sizzling really nicely, and I can hear it. I still have it on a fairly high heat right now, which is where I'm going to let it start. In about 30 seconds or so, I'm going to lower the heat. And you don't really want to agitate these potatoes very much, because you don't want to rip them or break them or anything like that, because there's so much starch in it. As soon as it goes in the pan, it's really just going to kind of stick to the pan. But as it develops that crust on it, it's going to loosen to the pan from the pan, where we can like pretty easily get it off. So if you're going to go in here with something and just kind of feel, you can feel it stuck to the pan. But like I said, we're going to lower the heat, and as the crust develops on the potato, it'll loosen itself from the pan. It's been about 30 seconds. I'm going to lower it to like a medium-high heat, somewhere in between those two, and just let it roll. And now keep in mind, so we've got our potatoes going, we've got our spinach going, and we have our Wellington still in the oven. Doing it now with like 5 minutes left on that Wellington should be perfect, because we should be able to take this Wellington out, let it rest on our cutting board for about 3 minutes before we slice it, while everything else comes together. So you can still see, if you just feel them, that they're stuck to the pan. So what I'm going to do while all this is working, and I feel comfortable with it, we're going to put together our salad. So you have your container of your chopped salad, and you're going to open it up, and you're going to see that the everything crumble is in there already, and then your ranch is in there as well. So you want to take your salad and put it in a mixing bowl. And you'll see that we have in here, we have mosh, we have arugula, we have little gems, we have radicchio, we have castelfranco, there's pickled crones, pickled types of brassicas, radish, turnips, carrots, celery. There's tons and tons of stuff. It's really nice. So what we're going to do is we are going to season it with salt and pepper first. Just a little bit of salt. And we're going to crack some pepper on it as well. And while I'm over here, I can feel that they're still stuck to the pan, but I can see on the edges they're starting to caramelize a little bit. I'm just going to lower the heat a little bit, because I feel like my pan's just a hair too hot. So we've got salt and pepper in here. We just want to mix that up just a little bit. Okay. And then our ranch, you don't need all this dressing. I always like to give more than what you'll need. But we're just going to drizzle it around the sides of the bowl. I used about 2/3 of it. And we're going to bring this together. And we can see that it's nicely dressed. And let's taste it and see how it tastes, if it needs salt or pepper in it. Great. So, in my serving bowl here, I'm going to take my salad, and I'm just going to go ahead and just dump it right into here. Okay, so we have our just salad in there. And then the last thing we're going to do to finish this is sprinkle our crumble on top. In here you'll find nori and pumpkin seed and sunflower seed, a little bit of fried potato, sesame seed, something called masago, which is a glutinous rice ball, nice and crunchy. But you have your California chopped salad with everything crumble on it. Okay. And I'm going to take this and just feel. They're still pretty stuck to the pan. You can loosen it just a little bit. See, now I just barely touched it and it came off the pan, and you can see the layer, or I can see the layers are starting to caramelize. So I'm just going to leave it be, but I'm going to loosen each one of these potatoes. If it doesn't want to come loose, don't force it loose, because then you'll rip it and break it. But these are at a point where I can freely move them in the pan, and they move right around, which is nice because then they'll start caramelizing all the way over. Or all the way on the surface, I mean. I'm going to give this a stir. You can see it's starting to get hot. And then it's been about 5 minutes, so let's check on our Wellington. Oh wow. Yeah. We can see now, really nice, caramelized, baked all the way through. You can see in between all the lattice that the puff pastry that's in between it has caramelized. I can tell this is nice and baked because of that. We can go ahead and just leave that there and turn our oven off. What I'm going to do is, because this pan's so hot, I'm going to take it off of here. And just let it rest directly on my cutting board, so it's already on there when we're ready to slice it. But you can see, really nice and caramelized. Don't be scared to get it a shade dark. You want to make sure that that puff pastry is cooked all the way through, so you have that nice crisp shell on the outside of your Wellington. So yeah, while this rests about 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to let these potatoes keep going and my squash still heating up, and then we'll check in on it again in about 3 to 5 minutes. Alright, so it's been exactly 4 minutes. My potatoes are pretty much ready to come out, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick them up, and then I'm going to flip them with the caramelized side up, just like this. You can, afterwards, you can see all the layers of potato in there. It's nice and crispy. So I'm going to take all 4 out. So you can see they're all nice and caramelized. But while we finish the rest of the meal, I turned the oven off, but it's still hot inside, so I'm just going to let this sit in there so they stay hot. And turn my pan off here. My spinach is nice and hot. So we're going to give it a stir. And in this spinach, you can see how green it is. When we make our bechamel for the actual cream part of the spinach, we puree a ton of blanched spinach into it, which gives it all its color. So this is going to go in a bowl. just like such. And you have your cream spinach along with your salad. I'm gonna grab my plate for my potatoes. They were only in here like a minute, so they're already hot from the pan. I just want to keep them nice and hot. Our potatoes are gonna go on a plate. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like such. And then in your bag, you also have something labeled finishing salt. So we've got our potatoes here. I don't know if you can see the steam rising off them, but they're nice and hot. We're gonna finish with just some of this finishing salt right on there, okay? So we have our potatoes, we have our salad, and we have our spinach. Right before we slice into this, I'm going to take my sauce and I'm going to heat it in the microwave for like 45 seconds. I know how to use this thing. No, not 4 minutes. Alright. So, while their sauce heats up, and I want to say, I cooked a squash Wellington. For the squash Wellington, we have a sauce that we made. It's completely vegetarian. It's based with a kombu broth that we have like charred onions and a bunch of aromatics, dried mushrooms in. And then we take that and we strain it and we thicken it with a little bit of xanthan gum. And then we season it with pastrami spice and Dijon mustard to go along with the theme of this meal. Just be careful. You don't want your sauce to bubble up and boil over in your microwave. Which it looks like it's getting pretty hot. And we're getting ready to slice this Wellington. I'm going to use a serrated knife. If you're going to use a straight knife, make sure it's very sharp because you want to be able to slice straight through this, and you don't want to apply any pressure when you do it because that's just going to rip up your nice crust that you've gotten on it. So we can see our sauce is now very hot, which I'm going to grab a little bowl for that. Just be careful because it comes out and it's very, very hot. Don't burn yourself. But I'm just going to put this on the side so we can eat it as we like. And like I said, I'm going to cut this with a serrated knife. We're going to trim off the edge first because there's obviously nothing really in the edge. And you can see pretty much from here to here is the squash. And it's going to be the same thing for the short rib. You're going to trim the edges and then you're going to slice as thick as you want. So I'm going to start just by, and I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm not applying any pressure at all. I'm just letting the knife do its work. And then you can see from the puff pastry, we have all these beautiful layers in here. It's crunchy on the outside, it's buttery and flaky on the inside. It's really, really delicious. I'm gonna let my dog have this piece. So I can see the squash is pretty much right up to the edge. So I'm gonna cut about a 2-inch piece or so, 1 3/4 inches. And again, we're letting the knife do all the work. And then when you open it, you can see I've got my squash here. If you got the short rib, this would be short rib. It's wrapped in, or it's coated in a duxelle of mushroom that has pastrami spice and mustard in it. And then it's wrapped in a caraway seed crepe. And then you can see all the puff pastry that's risen around it. So I'm gonna do 2 slices. Once again, loosely holding the knife, not applying any pressure, and I'm letting the knife do all the work. Just like such. I'm gonna let it fall. And then I have 2 slices, and there's enough for 1.5, 2 more slices there if you'd like it. Let me wipe my board down. So, there we have it. Our butternut squash Wellington, our potatoes, our spinach, our salad, and then lastly, our sauce to finish on the plate once we're ready to eat. I hope you all enjoy this meal, and thank you again for ordering from Ernest at Home.